Something huge just happened in the world of AI. And no, it wasn't a new model dropping. It was a single, brilliant chess move in a war for control that is really just getting started. So, what was this move, and why does it change basically everything? Let's get into it. For the last few years, we've thought about AI as something we just talk to. We give it a prompt, and it gives us a response. But that whole passive model, it's officially being replaced by something that is way, way more powerful. Something proactive. And that's Agentic AI. We're not talking about simple chatbots anymore. These are autonomous agents. They can remember what you like, they can carry out complex, multi-step tasks, and they can even control other software on your computer, all without you holding their hand every step of the way. Bottom line, they don't just respond, they act. Now, this shift from passive to active AI has been coming for a little while, but the race to completely own this new landscape just got a massive jolt. And it all came down to one key event: OpenAI hiring Peter Steinberger, the guy who created a viral project you may have heard of called OpenClaw. So to really get why this one hire is such a big deal, we have to first understand what OpenClaw even is. This wasn't some polished product from a big corporation. Nope, it was a scrappy, open source project that just absolutely took off. And when I say it took off, I really mean it. OpenClaw got over 180,000 stars on GitHub in just 3 months. That is a kind of growth that most venture-backed companies can only dream of. It very quickly became the tool for any developer who wanted to build their own custom AI assistant. So why did it go so viral? Well, the secret sauce was its architecture. It was all about putting you, the user, in control. It runs on your computer, not some company's cloud server. It uses local files for its memory, so it can actually remember things long term. It could even wake itself up to get things done. This just tapped into this really deep desire that developers have for owning their own data and their own tools. Okay, so you have this unbelievably popular open source project, and its explosion onto the scene created this golden opportunity. An opportunity that, as it turns out, one of OpenAI's biggest rivals, Anthropic, completely, and I mean completely, fumbled. Let's just walk through this disaster of a sequence. So at first, OpenClaw was actually called Claudebot, and it was driving thousands and thousands of developers to use Anthropic's Claude API. They were literally getting free evangelism. But instead of embracing it, what did they do? They sent in the lawyers with a cease and desist over the name. The move was just seen as so hostile, and it immediately painted Anthropic as this corporate bully, totally alienating the very community they should have been courting. And this right here is the pivot point for the entire story. The contrast is just perfect. While Anthropic was busy sending legal threats, OpenAI saw the opening. Anthropic's aggression created this massive rift, and Sam Altman just walked right through it, ready to play the hero for this project everyone loved. But here's where things get really, really interesting. OpenAI hired the creator, Peter Steinberger, but they put the OpenClaw project itself into a totally separate foundation. So why? Why would you pay a ton of money for the talent and then pay again to keep his most famous creation independent? Well, there's a much deeper strategy at play here. It really comes down to 3 brilliant, if not a little ruthless reasons. First, commoditize the complement. It's the classic give away the razor to sell the blades. They make the agent's body, OpenClaw, free for everyone. This creates a huge demand for the one thing you have to pay for, the brain, which is OpenAI's powerful APIs. Second, liability. Let's be honest, OpenClaw could be a security nightmare. By putting it in a foundation, OpenAI gets all the benefits of its innovation without being legally responsible if things go wrong. And third, talent denial. This was a pure defensive move. They had to stop a major rival, like Meta, from grabbing Steinberger and building a truly powerful, completely open-source competitor. Now, if you really want to understand what this means for the future of OpenClaw, you just have to look at OpenAI's track record. Their entire history is basically a story of them systematically backing away from their founding promise of transparency. And you can see this pattern building for years. They started out in 2015 as a nonprofit, all about being open. But by 2019, they switched to a for-profit model and started closing off access to their models. When GPT-4 came out, the technical report was practically a blank page. It had almost zero useful info. And then, in 2024, we found out their own AI safety team was being starved of the very computing resources they were publicly promised. This quote from Jan Leik, who used to run that safety team, just says it all. The priority inside the company shifted from making AI safe to just shipping flashy new products. That says a lot about where the company is headed and what it actually values. But of course, OpenAI isn't making these moves in a vacuum. This whole strategic dance was a direct response to some really aggressive moves being made by their biggest competitors, who are all in a mad dash to control this new agentic layer of AI. And if you zoom out, you can see two different philosophies taking shape. OpenAI is all about capturing the application layer, the tools and interfaces that we all actually click on and use. Anthropic, on the other hand, is trying to own the infrastructure layer. They want to control the plumbing, the code that everything else is built on top of, which is exactly what we saw when they acquired the JavaScript runtime Bun. So here's how the different playbooks break down. You've got OpenAI trying to capture entire ecosystems. Then there's Anthropic, trying to build this walled garden with vertical infrastructure. And then you have Google, which is just using its mountains of cash for capital dominance, basically trying to buy back the top talent it lost. But each one of these strategies comes with a huge risk, whether it's OpenAI's growing trust problem or Google's classic innovator's dilemma. So what does this all add up to? Where is this all headed? Well, when you piece together OpenAI's strategy, their history, and what the competition is doing, a very, very clear picture starts to emerge about the future. The most likely endgame here is the Chrome/Chromium model. OpenClaw will become like Chromium, the free, open-source engine that acts as a public testbed. But the real product, let's call it Operator for now, will be like Google Chrome. It'll be the polished, proprietary, paid version that learns from all the open source work, but keeps all the most valuable stuff locked away behind a paywall. And this really just brings us to the final conclusion. When you look at all the evidence, it's pretty hard to avoid. The Open and OpenAI's name, it's just a relic of the past at this point. It's a brand, not a philosophy that guides how they actually operate today. So here's the most important takeaway from all of this. We've all been obsessing over which company has the smartest model, but that was never the real endgame. The real war, the one that's happening right now, is for control of the agentic operating system that is going to manage every single part of our digital lives. And that leads to one final and very personal question. This isn't just about code or corporate strategy anymore. As these incredibly powerful systems become the new OS for our lives, a very small number of companies are consolidating all the control. So the real question you have to ask yourself is, who will you trust to run it?